Welcome to Sage Audio. Today, let's look at how to mix vocals in 11 steps. But first, if you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. Start with RxD Click. For this video, I'm going to be showing the mixing steps as a vocal chain. Also, I'll show the plugins that I personally like, but feel free to substitute them with ones that you use. Now, one thing that's almost always overlooked is removing vocal artifacts like mouth clicks and other unwanted sounds. Removing these is pretty simple with the RxD Click plugin. I'll set the algorithm to multi-band with random clicks, skew to the high frequencies, and keep a lower sensitivity. Now, since this plugin introduces significant latency, you'll want to export the vocal with the effect on it, and then use that as the base vocal for your processing. Let's take a listen to it, and note that I used a secondhand Stellar X2 microphone for this recording, so you should be able to achieve similar results with any entry-level condenser microphone. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. Use EQ for low pass and boost. The first insert that I'll use on the now declicked vocal track is an EQ with which I'll attenuate low frequencies up to right before the vocal's fundamental. Additionally, I'll very subtly boost this fundamental to make it sound slightly more in tune and rooted to the song's key. Now, both of these filters are going to help me in the next chapter when I'm tuning by removing unhelpful signals and augmenting the frequencies that I want to be triggered by the tuner. But first, let's take a listen to the subtle clarifying effect of this EQ. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. If you're enjoying the video, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free and it helps us bring you more videos. Introducing Natural Tuning. I'll use the MetaTune plugin for this track and first disable any note that isn't being sung, or at least isn't being sung intentionally. Then I'll reduce the speed and amount of the tuning to create a more natural sound, free from artifacts, but do the opposite for an unnatural sound. Let's take a listen and notice how this subtle tuning helps the vocal sound more professional. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. The most transparent de-essing. My personal favorite de-esser to use on vocals is the Weiss de-esser, which I find has the most transparent sound of any de-esser that I've used. Now, I typically use the high shelf and attenuate by about 3 to 5 dB, depending on the vocal. I like to de-ess before saturation, before more additive EQ, or any other additive processing, since I want to control sibilants pretty early on. Let's take a listen. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. Second, harmonic saturation. Up next, I'm going to saturate my vocal and use a warm tube setting, which regardless of the plugin you choose for this step, will typically introduce a second ordered harmonic. This makes the vocal warm and more in tune by amplifying in-key frequencies. Now notice that the vocal has frequencies below the fundamental again, which was likely introduced by a previous processor. To avoid forming my harmonics from these sub-frequencies, I've isolated the saturation to only the musical aspects of the vocal. Let's take a listen. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. Bringing vocals forward. More times than not, producers want a forward-sounding vocal, which can typically be accomplished with these compressor settings. Start with a soft knee and 4:1 ratio, followed by a quick attack, moderate release, a couple milliseconds of look ahead, and automatic makeup gain. If you use the Pro C2, there's a preset with these settings, which you can then tweak to better suit your vocal. Let's take a listen and notice how the vocal moves forward and is a lot easier to hear. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean. They don't mean anything. Soothe 2 to reduce resonance. If you're using an entry-level microphone like the one that I use for today's demonstrations, you may want to consider using Soothe 2, which is going to reduce resonances that are more common in less balanced mic capsules. Also, sometimes a vocalist just doesn't pair well with a mic. If that's the case, then this plugin is going to come in handy as well. Now, I use subtle settings with it, but I make sure to increase the quality to ultra to minimize unwanted phase cancellation. Also, I keep the processing on nearly the full frequency spectrum to correct resonances in the mids and also to help with any extra sibilance in the highs. Let's take a listen.
I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything.
If you're enjoying the channel, use the search box to watch more of our videos. Sends 1 and 2, long and short delay. To keep my vocals processing sounding distinct, I'm going to use buses for my temporal processing, like my reverb and delay. First, I'll create 2 buses, on both of which I'll insert Baby Audio's Comeback Kid, which is a great affordable delay plugin that also has a free version. Now on the first auxiliary track, I'm going to create a quarter note delay with mild feedback, a little bit of ducking, some distortion, modulation, and stereo widening. I'll make sure to lower the dry output to 0 since we'll blend the effect in with the aux channel fader. Now on the second auxiliary track, I'll create a 64th note delay and make sure to reduce feedback to 0 to avoid unnatural sounding phase interference. Now the quarter note delay is going to be very stylistic and more creative, whereas the 64th note delay is going to thicken the vocal. Let's take a listen.
I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything.
Send 3, Mix Glue Reverb. For my reverb, I'll use a bus send and auxiliary track again like I did in the last chapter. The Pro Q3 plugin has a great preset called Vocal to Mix Glue, which isolates the reflections to the mids, uses darker reflections and frequency modulation to blend the vocal in. Now, I like to adjust the settings to find what works best for the vocal and the mix, but the main concepts that I just described still work great at blending a vocal in. Let's take a listen.
I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything.
Layering lead vocal melody. With all of my temporal sends set up, I like to use this trick to support the vocal. I'll use a piano or any instrument that blends well with the vocal and record or program the vocal melody before sending the track to the vocal's temporal processing. The time-consuming part is making sure the notes match the vocal's timing, but once that's all done, this subtle instrument makes the vocal sound more powerful and in tune. Let's take a listen.
I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything.
Vocal bus routing and EQ. Last up, I'm going to change the output of my lead vocal, the supporting melody, and all of my temporal processing auxiliary tracks to a final vocal bus on which I'll insert an EQ. With this EQ, I can now shape all of the processing that came before it. I'll cut the unwanted lows again, boost a little of the fundamental, attenuate what sounds a little boxy or unpleasant, boost some presence frequencies, and add air. Now this is going to affect my lead and all of the reverb reflections and delay taps, making it a great way to get a cohesive vocal sound that still fits the mix. Let's take a listen to the final vocal.
I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything. I tell you what the words mean, they don't mean anything.
If you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching.